This is the world according to Jen and Carolyn.
All right, everybody. So today we're going to be discussing exorcisms and possession. Crystals, as usual, we're going to start with a history lesson. We want to delve into some of the wildest claims of demonic possession and exorcism and break down some of this shit with some good old-fashioned psychology. Are you ready? Carolyn? Okay, I need to describe Carolyn. Her head is currently covered to protect herself from inviting evil spirits.
Yeah.
She insisted that we light a candle, and we also have a glass of water to absorb any sort of like negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going on.
Gives the spirit somewhere to go.
Okay,
They're
cool.
Into water. And I'm also holding something metal to ground myself. And you're not doing any of this shit. I'm seriously worried about you right now.
I've always wanted to live in a haunted house, and
you're nuts.
Let's see what happens. All right, Carolyn, why don't you tell us what comes to mind for you when you think about exorcism?
Well, it's weird because on one hand, this shit freaks me the fuck out. Like, I'm not kidding you. I have to drive home before it gets dark, and I will lock myself into one room where nothing bad can happen to me.
That's amazing. And by the way, Carolyn lives in my mother-in-law, my husband's parents' house. It's the house that my husband grew up in. It's the house that his father grew up in, right? And so Carolyn, because she's my best friend, we had to do a ton of cleaning to get this house move-in ready, remodeling, etc. So we moved a lot of stuff into the garage, and we're slowly clearing it out. And I love to fuck with Carolyn. She's like, I just heard a phone ringing downstairs. She's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. We called the phone company. We got it disconnected. And then she's like, oh my God, are you serious? I'm like, no, psych, bitch. We didn't call nobody.
I hate you. I hate you.
She'll be there, and there's like mountains of plastic bags, like garbage bags full of old clothes. She calls it Mount Olinger, which is my husband's last name. And a bag will like fall when she's at home by herself, and she can hear it upstairs.
Freaks the crap out of me.
So amazing.
It freaks me out. So again, the occult and exorcisms absolutely freak me out, and yet I'm weirdly fascinated by them. And I think it had to do with being in a highly religious school at Westport Lutheran and learning about how Jesus saved possessed people. I was super into that. Like, I got really into catechism when we learned about that. I'm like, wait, what'd he do? This is cool. So I love thinking about these things, but I'm also a complete scaredy cat and a wuss. And the first time I think I saw The Exorcist was with you at that movie theater on Geary Street.
The bridge.
Is that the bridge? No. The Alexandria?
Oh, the Alexandria.
Wait,
it's gone now.
Right? No, yeah, it's gone. Yeah. And we went and saw that. And I also really love The Crucible, the play in the book. And I got really into the Salem witch trials. Justice for Tituba.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So I love this movie that most folks haven't heard of called The First Power with Lou Diamond Phillips. He's a star of that movie. That one's excellent. And there's also a movie called Shocker. Not sure if you've seen it, but this really terrible serial killer ends up on death row and somehow like shocks himself, and then he's able to get his spirit into people's bodies. And he has a limp. He like drags his leg, and so he'll get into people's bodies, and you know he's in their body because they're like also limping.
Is it Kaiser Sose?
It's not Kaiser Sose. Check it out. It's very entertaining. At least I remember it being entertaining. It's probably hot garbage now that I'm an adult. Anyway. So we're going to start this episode the way we start most of our episodes, with a history lesson. So thank you, History Channel, and big thanks. So you mentioned this, AD 70. Jesus cast out evil spirits in the Gospel of Mark. So they're thinking like, oh, Jesus, that's his primary deal. He can cast out evil spirits. And the Gospel seems to imply that Jesus became famous as much for his exorcisms as his ministry. Cool. Then we're going to skip all the way to 1526. We've got Martin Luther. He adds exorcism to baptismal rites from the man who brought you the Protestant Reformation. At that point, exorcism was well-trodden territory for Catholics who had writings, teachings, and rituals to guide them. But Protestant exorcisms, on the other hand, were mostly conducted through prayer and fasting and often involved the entire community, resulting in a public affair that could border on performance. Boring. Unless you're throwing
exorcism.
holy water on me and like tying me up and slapping the shit out of me, I am interested. All right, 1621, we have Richard Burton's epic 1621 work, The Anatomy of Melancholy. Goes into a huge digression about the varieties of demonic possession. And in it, he mentions how devils and demons cause an entire compendium of mental illnesses, but also that anything, objects and animals included, can be possessed. Yes. I'm pretty sure all cats are possessed by the devil, so he might be onto something. Then we have the early 1900s, evangelicals' prompt revival of exorcism. In the early 1900s, the Pentecostal movement emerged among American evangelicals. Pentecostalism focused on the Holy Spirit and included supernatural components like glossolalia, better known as speaking in tongues. Fuck yeah. Faith healing, miracles, and exorcism. That's what I'm talking about. They bring the flair, the Pentecostals. 1971, we have William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel, The Exorcist, based on the real life story of a 14-year-old boy who underwent Catholic exorcism in Maryland and Missouri in 1949. We're going to talk about the real story behind this, because if you've seen The Exorcist, you know it was a girl in the movie. So, the film was released in the film version of his book was released in 73, and at a time that was transitional for cinema and Catholicism. The Exorcist had a huge influence on the rise of the horror genre, and films of the 1970s in general often had a grittier or rougher edge. So my moms, both of them, they went and saw it in the theater, and I don't know if this is something they witnessed or something that was just happening across the country. People were freaking out and running out of the movie theater. They were like vomiting and freaking out.
Wasn't that like the big thing about like people would like have those like the vapors or like have like fainting
something like that? Yeah,
I'm like,
and it's intense. I was watching to prepare for this episode. I was watching some clips. I'm like, fuck
why?
This is intense.
The song comes on. Even just looking at the photo of the movie poster freaks the shit out of me.
It was scary.
I have a wild imagining.
Scary shit. Still to this day, it fucking holds up.
Yes.
So, this was a big shift for the Catholic Church. This was in 1999. The church revised and updated their rites of exorcism. The cardinal who oversaw this revision said it has more sober language with fewer adjectives than in the previous one. But the basic setup is exactly the same. So, the 1999 revision does make substantial efforts to say that exorcism should not be a substitute for medical help and that possession is not the same as mental illness. Exorcism is one thing, psychiatry another. That's what Cardinal Medina said. If the exorcist has doubts about the sanity of a possessed person, he can consult a specialist. It can be a collaboration. How do you determine someone's sanity level if they're possessed by a demon?
Also, I really want to be a part of that collaboration.
I know. That sounds amazing.
Any priests want to contact me, I will help you consult.
Yes, totally. So, what I'm about to say is going to hit different depending on what you believe. But I want to talk about some of the most like extreme exorcisms in history, and also about the belief in demonic possession. So, this one, the exorcism of Clara Germana Tele. This was in 1906. This was the exorcism of a young Zulu girl named Clara Germana Tele. Her name was altered to Sele in some sources. It's among the most dramatic ever reported. The presiding priest, Reverend Erasmus Horner, claimed Tele levitated several feet in the air, walked up a wall, displayed telepathic abilities, and understood a multitude of languages. The account gets even more nightmarish, with some witnesses claiming Tele could extend her limbs and neck to incredible lengths. During the ritual, Horner was assisted by another priest, several nuns, and 8 large, strong girls who were tasked with restraining Tele. Horner claims all 8 were lifted in the air with Tele as she levitated. It was finally declared a success, a couple of days later after it started, and just to be sure it took, he exorcised her again that same evening. She cooperated. I guess all was well. Anyway, then we have the exorcism of Emma Schmidt. This was 1928. Now, the 1928 exorcism of this 46-year-old woman in Earling, Iowa, is one of the best known cases in America. Some accounts refer to the woman pseudonymously
Nice.
as
job,
Anna
Jen.
Eklund. Anna Eklund, I think that sounds familiar, but her real name is supposed to be Emma Schmidt. Anyway, nobody gives a shit about this. Let's talk about what happened. The case was detailed in a 1935 German pamphlet called "Begone, Satan: A Soul-Stirring Account of Diabolical Possession."
Great title.
I know, right? Begone, Satan.
Begone, Satan.
And profiled. I want a shirt that says just "Begone, Satan." Everybody has "Not Today, Satan" shirts. I want a "Begone, Satan" shirt.
Not today's.
Right? Some of the most spectacular allegations will be familiar to anyone who's seen The Exorcist. So Schmidt supposedly levitated, was tied to a bed, and according to one of Reisinger's associates, that was the priest, vomited quantities that were, humanly speaking, impossible to lodge in a normal human being. Blech. One unique thing about the Earling exorcism, as it has become known, is the nature of the entities that supposedly possessed her. Besides the requisite demons, the tormenting spirits were said to include Schmidt's dead father and his child murdering lover. Cool.
Whoa.
And then here we go. This is the big dog. This is The Exorcism of Roland Doe, 1949. This is what the book and the movie The Exorcist were based on. In 1949, Jesuit priests spent weeks working to free a 14-year-old Maryland boy known as Roland Doe from alleged demonic possession. Newspaper coverage of the case would eventually inspire, again, William Peter Blatty to write The Exorcist. The Doe family first began hearing strange sounds in 1949. They assumed the scratching noises coming from their walls and ceiling were the work of rats.
Yeah.
Exterminators, they couldn't find any rats. The family soon started experiencing other frightening phenomenon, including unexplained footsteps, furniture and dishes moving on their own volition, violent shaking of their teenage son's bed. The activity seemed to center around Roland, even following him when he stayed with neighbors. They thought the boy's aunt, who had died recently, was haunting them. And so they initially appealed to a Lutheran church or a Lutheran minister, and they're like, no, man, you got to talk to the Catholics about this. We don't specialize in this shit, right? And so Father E. Albert Hughes unsuccessfully attempted to exorcise Roland. The boy allegedly broke off a piece of mattress spring and attacked the priest with it, slashing his arms. Whoa. Hardcore. That's fucking metal. Roland and his mother eventually left their home and traveled to St. Louis to visit relatives, hoping to escape whatever was troubling them.
I would be like, can you not stay with us?
Yeah. I don't know about this. It's like bringing bed bugs into somebody's house. Yeah. It's not going to work out. So apparently the spirit followed him, and they had to do the ritual again. So throughout the ritual, the priest claimed to see words and images appear on the boy's body in the form of spontaneous scratches. At one point, Roland broke Halloran, the other priest's nose. The exorcism continued night after night, and finally he seemed normal. He went on to lead a quiet life free of whatever condition led to the infamous exorcism. It was probably just puberty. Carolyn,
How's your bed moving so violently?
Is your bed spontaneously wet? No. Something else. So, Carolyn, I touched on this with the 99 revision that the Catholic Church did of the exorcism rites. Can we talk about some of the possible psychological explanations for what some interpret as demonic possession?
Well, I think this is kind of a hard thing because you can't really say it isn't true.
Yeah.
Right? Do demons walk among us and take over the human body? And we all, have to remember that being possessed by demons or evil spirits is one of the oldest ways of explaining a bodily or mental disorder.
Makes sense.
And they used to think that mental issues were caused because you have rotten teeth, so they pulled all your teeth out.
That makes a little more sense.
I think, as we get along in the timeline of since AD 70, right? We have other things to kind of measure and whatnot. But I love this Norwegian article from PubMed in 1996, just called "Possessed!" ! So during the Middle Ages of Europe, possession and witchcraft was considered just one out of several causes of mental of illnesses. Astrological theories prevailed, and in addition to the humoral theories of medicine, like actual, medical data. But in addition, distinctions were often made between eccentricity, madness, religious visions, and revelations. And again, you can't say that you didn't see it. I just didn't see it. So it's kind of it's a harmless crime.
He said,
right?
she said.
Yeah, exactly.
They said, he said. Yeah.
Wasn't there a lady who said she was in a relationship with a ghost?
Oh, no, there was an article in Vice where a woman claimed to be married to the spirit of a pirate ghost.
Cool.
Yeah.
If I'm
do you,
married,
girl?
Pirate ghost?
Yeah, that's kind of hot. I get it.
I can't wait for a couple to come to me for couples counseling, and she's like, he's a ghost.
I am waiting for that day.
Okay. So, again, a large number of the alleged, when you have witches or quote, possessed persons, were often just burned and probably, had visible mental disturbances. Yeah. And so today, psychiatry does not refer to these symptoms of possessions, but they do put them in a specific category, which is called some type of psychotic disturbance of thought.
Okay, makes sense.
Right? So that's our 2000s version of this.
Doesn't explain how I can spontaneously start speaking Aramaic, for instance, but who knows?
No. So here's one thing I want us to consider as we talk about this, is I want to be very sensitive, because there are culture-bound syndromes and something called transcultural psychology, psychiatry, and probably psychology. So in a culture of which America is not one of, many people actually still do believe that certain behaviors are caused by demonic possession, and the manifestations of these mental health issues that you and I might experience, that's the reason why this is happening. And so a person with schizophrenia, for example, might believe that he or she hears the voice of Satan, or that he or she is in fact possessed by Satan. And if you grew up in a culture that ingrained those messages, it's not entirely impossible. Yeah. So that gives us also some historical context to why this would be happening. I don't necessarily know in America, but again, this is what I thought was the most interesting about transcultural psychiatry and psychology. Some of these syndromes are unique to the country, the faith, the culture, and symptoms of these hallucinations, strange behavior, change of voice, speaking different languages, seizures, and tremendous strengths. What this can actually do is it does allow the possessed person, sometimes they're saying, well, they might have just externalized or internalized their trauma. And so if we can give this a name and a face, and ritually extract it from you, for many survivors of abuse, feelings of guilt, or, again, the complications that go with those experiences, an exorcism can actually represent a cathartic experience.
That makes sense. It's symbolic.
That might solve problems. And there's a wonderful movie called The Horse Boy, which the organization I work for practices a lot of, I forget the last name, Rupert. Oh God, that's terrible. I can't remember. But their child is quite severely autistic, and they take him to Mongolia, to this tribe, and one of the things they do is ritually hitting the parents with brushy sticks, and they're saying, well, he's possessed, like he's it's your dead aunt or something like that. And what actually ends up happening is the parents are crying and releasing, and so there is that idea that this can be somewhat cathartic, and can actually inspire change in behavior and personality. So I thought that was very interesting. So I do want to name that we're not mocking if this is your cultural belief. Yes. I am in no way mocking you or making fun of that, and if it is helpful for you, cool. Here's my other thing, though.
There's always a flip side.
In America, this is not, if you're not from a culture that does find this ritual and cathartic. What actually might cause you to be, quote, demonically possessed according to science? So again, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, I finally said it right.
It's only your profession.
The power of Christ compelled me in this episode. So the DSM does not recognize demonic possession as a psychiatric issue. You can't get insurance coverage for going to therapy because you're demonically possessed.
Is it a pre-existing condition?
I don't know, maybe. But there is little doubt that there is this idea of the power of suggestion, if you believe something. And so here's what we do know, again, according to science and what we've learned over time. Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is in the DSM. It's typically recognized as a disintegration of thinking, process, and emotional responsiveness. It's often associated with psychoses such as hallucinations and delusions, and schizophrenics may appear how a person functions in one of what you might see in a exorcism.
Okay.
Not always, right?
Yeah.
So that could be a reason for some of these historical references. The biggest one, though, is an organic brain syndromes, most specifically epilepsy, which is a neurological disorder that causes frequent seizures. Neurologists believe that epilepsy is not just one disorder either, that it's a symptom of a collection of brain disorders. So again, you might see that as a reason for some of these historical references. Also, personality issues, delusions, hallucinations, severe depression. These all might be candidates for exorcisms in generations past. And in some cases, absolutely can cause frightening and unusual behavior. So this could be part of a psychotic illness. It also can be aided with antipsychotic treatment. I also think, could it be drug induced?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen someone on bath salts?
Oh yeah, you will eat someone's face on that shit.
Yeah, and you might get superhuman strength.
Yes,
all kinds of
that's
things.
true.
So this is also why
Bath salts in the time of Jesus.
well, but here's something very interesting, and this is, I always love talking about this when I mention the crucible. So mold. So think about prior to refrigeration and prior to preserving foods. Excuse me. So in 1976, Linda Corporal offered the first evidence that the Salem witch trials followed an outbreak of rye ergot.
Ooh.
Ergot is a fungus that forms, it can cause hallucinogenic responses, and it typically is in bread. So victims appear to be bewitched, and they're actually just stoned on ergot.
Well, that makes sense. That Beatles song, Penny Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Sit and eat wild rye. If those are actually the lyrics, but yeah.
So ergot thrives in cold winter followed by a wet spring.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I always thought that was really fascinating too. I remember I wrote that in my AP history because I wanted to talk about Salem witch trials, and my teacher was super impressed, and I was like, "Yeah,
sweet,
I'm smart." So here's what happens though when exorcism go wrong. So we know that mental issues, absolutely, mental imbalances can cause what we might perceive as strange behaviors, and people tend to conform to expectations. This means a person who's experienced an exorcism, John, is more likely to act in ways he or she believes someone else may have behaved in an exorcism. So that power of suggestions. And exorcism sometimes also involves use of potions, drugs, fasting, which also can induce violent illness and strange behavior. Starvation can affect brain function. Yeah. We just talked about
I'm hangry. When I'm hangry, there's like a demon inside me.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. And so the stress of an exorcism can if your whole family's like, there's a demon inside you, and you're like, no, there isn't. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Well, especially if you're a teenager.
Yeah. No, Mom. I'm just jerking off a lot. Leave me the fuck alone. Why is there
just teen angst
in here? Yeah. So we have to be really careful too, because again, I'm sure there are a lot of people who this was done against their will, and it could have been extremely traumatic. This I did think was interesting though. So something called possession syndrome, which is associated with a diagnosis that every time it gets brought up, it's problematic. Dissociative identity disorder. And it has a legal implication.
Used to be known as multiple personality disorder. Most people still know it that way.
In a Psych Information research article in 2016, someone presented a brief case history of a man convicted of a murder and diagnosed by the president as suffering from an atypical dissociative disorder that they termed possession syndrome. This possession syndrome is defined as a dissociative disorder in which the patient unconsciously believes that they are possessed by evil spirits who act out forbidden wishes. And this manifestation depends on the patient's view of what this demonic spirit is like and how they should act. And this is a rationale that they use. And again, you could see how this could, again, to me, it's just like, well, no, you are clearly either lying or psychotic, but again, malingering, multiple personality, or real possession is often discussed when someone does bring this into a courtroom. When I read that article, I was actually wanting to do a little more research on this. Yeah. But it's kind of scary because if you're also saying, well, the Catholic Church, if priests can say, I'll bring a priest as an expert witness, yes, exorcisms happen. Yeah. well, then if this person's saying, well, I killed this person because I was possessed by the devil.
Oh, we're going to get into that, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Great segue, Carolyn. Thank you for illuminating this conversation with some psychological references. So, I've always been super into the paranormal. I think you can relate to this. I blame the movie Ghostbusters for this, which I saw at 5 years old. Parapsychology, the study of mental phenomena which are excluded from or inexplicable by orthodox scientific psychology, such as hypnosis, telepathy, etc., is fascinating. And I wanted to talk briefly about two of the most famous real-life paranormal investigators. They weren't officially parapsychologists, but they kind of fall into that category. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, if this sounds familiar to you, these names, they are the two people who the Conjuring franchise is based on. They were American paranormal investigators and authors associated with... Carolyn is covering her face and acting scared.
Think about it.
Grow up. I love this. This is why I have a crew of two other folks, and we're the scary movie crew, and we go and we see these things together. Carolyn cannot be a part of this crew. So these two, they were paranormal investigators and authors associated with prominent cases of alleged hauntings. Edward was a self-taught and self-professed demonologist, author, and lecturer. His wife, Lorraine, professed to be clairvoyant and a light trance medium who worked closely with her husband. And so they explored some of the most famous alleged haunts and possessions in history. Anybody heard of Amityville Horror? The Enfield poltergeist? They were behind that, or at least responsible for investigating it. So while both the Warrens have since died, they left a legacy of paranormal investigations in their wake. Many of the stories are loosely based on facts, but many have questioned the Warrens' intentions and wonder if they weren't just brilliant charlatans. But we're not going to focus on that. We want to focus on some of the most prominent investigations they were involved in that supposedly involved hauntings, possessions, etc. I wanted to stick exclusively to demonic possession and exorcism, but this shit is just so goddamn fascinating. I just had to talk about the Warrens' most famous cases. So this one relates to what you were talking about in terms of somebody being possessed and doing something goddamn terrible to another human being. This is called The Devil Made Me Do It. It's a Brookfield paranormal trial. It's the basis behind the latest Conjuring movie, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. So in 1981, Arnie Cheyenne Johnson stabbed and killed Alan Bono, claiming that he was possessed by a demon when he committed the murder. This was the first time in the American court system where a defendant claimed demonic possession. Fascinating. According to a 1981 article from the New York Times, the Warrens spent time with Johnson and his family and claimed rationale in the demonic possession theory. However, a judge ultimately disregarded this theory, don't know why, sentenced Johnson to prison where he served 5 years before being released. I'm trying to remember, there's a true crime. It might be the Morbid Girls who do an episode on this, but I did listen to a true crime episode on this. It's fascinating. So then we have Amityville. I think most folks know about Amityville. Perhaps it's the most famous case investigated by the Warrens. It's known as the Amityville Horror. It went on to launch its own multi-million-dollar franchise before appearing in the second Conjuring movie. Unfortunately, most of the things that happened or were purported to have happened were deemed hoaxes. But this is the claim. George and Kathy Lutz claim they were driven out of their Long Island home in 1975 by a violent paranormal entity. A year before the Lutz family moved into the home, it was reported that Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 family members in the house. That happened. The Warrens investigated the home and claimed that it was haunted. However, further investigations have revealed that the reportings happening, like I said, were mostly a hoax. And then everybody's favorite possessed doll, Annabelle, who looks very different in real life from the way that she was made up in the Annabelle movies. It was actually a Raggedy Ann doll. It's claimed to be haunted by the spirit of a young girl named Annabelle Higgins. The doll was said to have moved on its own. But once it was claimed by the Warrens in 1970, it was placed in glass enclosure in their occult museum in Monroe. They show that in the movie.
Nothing scarier than a fucking doll.
I know. Dolls are frightening by themselves, but
I don't even like these bobbleheads in here right now.
I know.
I'm
Carolyn's
getting
man cave.
scared.
Oh my god.
I'm not going home tonight.
You can stay here. You're welcome to stay here. The character of Annabelle has since been a staple in the Conjuring franchise with 3 movies dedicated to the history of this fucking doll. I know. Can we just burn this thing?
Yes.
Just Chucky this shit.
Yeah.
Throw it in the fire. So in 2020, a rumor started that the doll had escaped its enclosure in the museum. However, those rumors were disproven as the doll still remains in Monroe. It's all bullshit. The Conjuring house. Folklore claims that this 18th century home in Harrisville, Rhode Island is haunted by a woman who killed herself and her child in order to haunt any occupants who dared step foot in the house. In 1974, the Warrens made multiple trips to the home to investigate claims of levitating beds and the smell of rotting flesh. Awesome! It reminds me of In Succession, where they go to their like summer home or whatever. They're like, what the fuck is that smell? And they
was it like a dead rat? No.
The contractor shoved a bag of dead raccoons into the...
Thank you, Logan.
Yeah, you didn't pay me, bitch. Shoved dead raccoons into the chimney. Awesome. Anyway, I digress. So their trips to the house would be chronicled in the first Conjuring movie. So 45 years after the Warrens' investigation of the premises, the house was purchased by a new family who has opened the home to paranormal investigations. That is amazing. So I'm not going to delve into specifics regarding the legitimacy of the Warrens and their investigations. Suffice to say that folks who dedicate their lives to shit like demon hunting and paranormal investigations tend to arouse suspicion. Are these investigators legit? Or are they preying on people in vulnerable situations? Hell, are the people in these situations trying to gain fame or infamy by saying this shit is happening in their home?
Can't say it's not.
That's true. Carolyn, let's depart from our usual psychological explanation for things and talk about parapsychology. What is it, and how does it relate to psychology, and is it legitimate?
Well, Jen, in the words of Dr. Peter Venkman, from a movie you may be familiar with, there are some things in this world that go way beyond human understanding. Things that cannot be explained. Things that most people don't want to know about. That's where we come in. Sometimes shit happens. Someone has to deal with it. And who you gonna call? Parapsychologist!
He's like, on the next episode, hairless cats.
Yeah,
Weird. We've clearly seen Ghostbusters 2 many times.
World of the Psychic. And he points his head to his hand, his finger to his head.
Go watch that, guys.
Yeah, I love it. Very good. So anyway, the truth is, Jen, that there's actually a branch of psychology that deals with paranormal behavior and events such as telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, which is not explainable by present day natural laws, so basically by science. It's technically believed though to be a science, and it has measures and tests and runs data, but nothing's ever conclusive.
Of course.
But I personally have been to several mediums and people who purport ESP or PSI or reading and things like that, and even being a very highly anxious woman, I do believe that there is that idea of like intuition, and feelings and things like that.
I agree.
So, if you believe in even a little bit in that, then it's possible. I think anything's possible, right? And it's kind of neat to think about, unless it's scary, and then I don't want to think about it at all, or if it's going to jump up at me when I'm down in the basement. So anyway, parapsychology.
The power of trash compels you.
So while psychological ideas have deep historical roots, Joseph Banks Rhine has been described as the father of parapsychology. And in the 1930s, he and his colleagues at Duke University carried out studies of extrasensory perception using means such as card guessing, dice rolling to seek evidence. That's also a great Ghostbusters thing.
The first one?
He's hitting on the girl, and she's like, yes. And then
he's shocking the guy.
The other girl, and he runs out.
I was just going to say,
he's like,
8 o'clock.
People don't understand us.
So good.
So terrible. Anyway, so parapsychology does seek to investigate psychic phenomenons and includes purported mental abilities such as telepathy and telekinesis. So that's your ability to kind of move things with your mind or hear it.
I can bend a spoon, bitch.
I mean, right? Like, isn't it just another form of fucking Star Wars? The Jedi mind trick, right?
Totally.
It's just telekinesis and telepathy, right? Yep. So they aim to test the existence and explore the nature of experiences and abilities in this paranormal realm. So Psychology Today article talks about parapsychology involving the study of these phenomenons by scientists, scholars, and evidence of their existence. So I want to go into a little bit of what I've named some of these terms and might want to just clarify. So precognition, perceiving information of the future, such as a vision or a dream. I hella fucking have this.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do not doubt it. Now, again, you could say it's just a series. Well, also you could say like we've already lived this life. So we're just really, now we're getting
Deja vu, bitch.
Deja vu, right? Clairvoyance, perceived information about distant locations.
Okay.
So you might see this a lot of times, like they'll call in the psychic to like solve a crime.
God damn Sylvia Brown.
Telepathy, communicating mind to mind without the use of normal senses. ESP, extrasensory perception that seems to transcend the five senses. Psychokinesis, we already talked about this, the power of manipulating objects with your mind. And something called an out-of-body experience, which is perceiving one's own body from above. So
Cool.
you'll see this a lot when people talk about near-death experiences, which also have a lot of scientific explanations within our subconscious and what happens to your brain when you're...
It happened to me when I was in LSD once.
Cool.
It was awesome.
Well, and also when that's happening, your brain's getting a ton of dopamine and all kinds of cool ass shit.
With the dying brain.
Yeah. So, and then also apparitions and hauntings. So there's an NBC segment from 2013 on parapsychology, if it's still being studied. And I'm not going to lie. This kind of sounds like a cool ass career move for me. You can, Indeed says I can make between $70,000 and $80,000 a year doing it. And I could go to the University of Edinburgh Kosler unit, and they have two dope professors looking for research assistants. Peter Lamont, he's doing the history of psychology and magic of the paranormal, and Carolyn Watt, who's replicating methodological, I don't know, whatever.
Methodological.
I had a glass of wine and kombucha, so I'm super...
Kombucha will fuck you up, man.
I know, and I'm scared.
I think
so
you're
I'm talking
possessed.
extra fast.
Yeah,
I'm just
it must
scared.
be a spirits inhabiting your body.
So you absolutely can study this. In the United States, Christine Simmons Moore is a professor of assistant professor at the University of West Georgia, teaches an undergraduate class on parapsychology, and so anyway, so it's you absolutely can look at this, and they look at people and how they perceived color and images and textures and stuff. And I don't know, like what they say when you listen to music, do you see colors?
Yeah, synesthesia.
Yeah,
it's a thing. I have a painting by somebody who claims to have synesthesia.
I think it looks like a woman's butt.
It doesn't.
It
God
does.
Damn it. It looks art is subjective, bro.
I see a butt.
And women's butts are beautiful.
Post it. I see a butt.
Yeah.
All right. So again, is it a hoax? Is it real? I don't know. Indeed says you can get a job with it. So
dude, I think I smell a career shift for the two of us. We need to start our own paranormal investigative company.
Weren't there also a ton of shows that came out too?
They're still on.
Are they still on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't watch a lot of network TV, but apparently they're still on. So yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. We can make money.
All right.
I'm thinking about this.
I'm down.
I'm going to mull over this. But while I do, I want to finally ask the question, why are so many people fascinated by exorcism, ghost hunting, and the idea of demonic possession anyway? I mean, I'm over here like Fox Mulder screaming, I want to believe. So I get it. I alternate between being Scully and Mulder. So there's a couple of reasons why it's been suggested that we are so fascinated by this. The first, and I can totally relate to this, is parental paranoia. The demon controlling its adolescent host doesn't just represent raging teenage hormones. It also stands in for every parent's nightmare. The bad influences corrupting their precious child. I think my child's possessed.
Don't you play that knocking game with them too?
Oh, spirit knocking? Yeah. Where we pretend to ask spirits questions. It's something ridiculous like, Spirit, is Liam a doo-doo head? My child's name. Knock once for yes and twice for no. We do it while he's in the tub, and I just knock my hand on the tub. It's so awesome.
You're giving him nightmares.
No, he can't. He is unshakable.
Oh God.
My child is afraid of nothing.
God damn it.
Nothing I've shown him yet. We will find something that terrifies him. So religion is another reason. Dr. Peter Hutchings, the author of Historical Dictionary of Horror Cinema, you blow out that fucking candle, it smells.
Me?
Yeah. Yeah, the spirits are gonna get you, girl. But your allergies won't. The goddamn smell of that candle always gets to me.
It does, too. I've been coughing a lot.
Yep, exactly. See, you're trying to keep away demons, but instead you're just blackening your lungs. So So back to Dr. Peter Hutchins, Historical Dictionary of Horror Cinema. He believes that they're also linked to our religious yearnings. We turn to demonic possession films because they provide reassurance that there is some spiritual dimension out there, that there's something beyond the secular. Interesting. So Diane Winston, she's an expert on religion and the media at the University of Southern California. She says, exorcism is Hollywood's wet dream. It's taking on the most fundamental questions of good versus evil and doing it in a way that's titillating and vaguely scandalous. How could you go wrong at the box office? Makes sense, Diane Winston. Carolyn, any psychological musings on this?
Well, I think people are into strange magic.
Totally.
You know, and it's something for our imagination to escape to and to fantasy. I actually read something that if you're going on a first date, the two of you should go see a horror movie. It's intensely bonding to get scared together. I've even seen things that if you're trying to get in shape, watch scarier things because your heart rate actually does
That makes
go
a lot
up.
of sense.
Yeah.
On our first date, Bill and I, my husband, went to a very nice restaurant, and then we came back to his house. I did not give it up on the first date. And we watched,
Liar.
and I was like, I didn't, I swear. I waited till date number 3, but I had just recently watched The Human Centipede with a friend.
You watched The Human Centipede
And I was
on
like,
your first date?
I was like, Bill, honey, you got to watch this. And
Oh my God.
we got 20 minutes into it. He's like, this is fucking me up. We need to turn it off.
Good-
But apparently it worked
It
because
is
we're
bonding.
married.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is bonding. So
Trauma bond.
Exactly. They're horror films. So, you know, it's taboo. It's not, you know, again, if you were really brought up in a religious family, that's probably something you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah. My husband hates these films, and I think it's primarily because he's a devout Catholic.
I'm laughing. I'm sorry. You know, but again, this is something universal that this is what I find interesting. It doesn't matter where you go in the world or what culture. This is something that universally all humans can talk about.
Yeah.
As you know, spirits and things like this fascination with our brain making sense of our environment.
Yes.
So here's the best psychological answer I can give you, though, is something called object permanence. So this is our brain's need to basically understand that objects continue to exist even when you can't see them. So Swiss developmental psychologist John Piaget outlined this theory of cognitive development. If you have a kid, they'll often say, hey, they meet these different stages. So basically, object permanence is important to our development. So this would be like playing peekaboo.
Okay.
You know, or like you'll see parents, it's actually kind of funny to do a kid, like you'll show them a ball and then you'll cover it with a blanket and you'll take the ball out and then you'll remove the blanket and the ball's gone and the kid's like, what the fuck? Like even
I'm still like, what the fuck?
And so there's this idea that we're like, wait, where did it go?
Yeah.
Like it's like magic.
I got your nose.
I got your nose. Yeah. So there, you know, it's something within our biology and within our brain that we want to understand things. If we can't see them, that's very disorienting. If they were there and now they're not, that's a very weird feeling.
That makes sense.
So there is that kind of, you know, I think this is why, you know, like space exploration or things like that, you know, it's hard if I don't see something, I don't care as much. And so there's this idea that like, well, if I can't understand into good in physics, like I don't understand black holes. What do you mean there's a hole where time and space don't exist? But this is a thing,
Yeah.
you know? And so if you call physics a science, you know, then we also have to at least entertain. Physics is a science. I'm not saying it's not.
You're questioning physics.
What comes up does come down. I do get that. But anyway, I think that this idea of object permanence and impermanence is something that, you know, ability to visualize and form mental images that are psychologically present gives us a sense of understanding who we are.
Yeah.
So if something's fucking with that, and that also gives me a lot of empathy and sympathy for someone who is schizophrenic or someone who does have hallucinations. Can you imagine being told that doesn't exist?
Right.
You're actually supposed to say, oh, yeah, that guy over there, I do see
It's
him.
very
But
real to them.
He's not bringing us any harm. It's okay. You know, or whatever. If he is bringing us harm, let's go in the other room.
Right.
You know, and you think about dementia. The brain is really powerful.
It is, absolutely.
And if you do see something or don't see something, or your brain can bring you back to another time, who could say, so I don't know, part of me wants to say we can, again, the Scully part wants to say, absolutely, we can explain this with science. These people probably had dementia, or they had, you know, some type of hallucination from something else. But also it's fun to think about. Maybe there is something bigger than objects.
Yeah, and what you said is interesting. Like people we're technically objects, and it's hard to make sense of here one day, gone the next. And if we lose somebody whom we love and they're gone, it's hard to believe that they're really, truly gone. And I think that's why people and lots of folks will exploit this and take folks for their money and pretend to have, abilities that they don't to communicate with your loved one. But I think that we desperately want to, one, make sense of the world around us, and two, believe that the people that we love and care about are in a place where we will ultimately reunite with them, and where maybe, just maybe, it's possible that while we're in this form, in this human form, that we can connect to them while they're in a spiritual form.
Absolutely.
I get that. Yeah. If you've ever loved someone deeply, I think you can relate to that. And it's very fascinating. My friend was married to this doctor, and she said to me, we were having a conversation about the supernatural, and we were talking about it, and we said, these things, that so many of these things that we just discussed could very well exist. It's not that they don't exist because they can't be explained by science. It's that maybe we don't have the science or the language yet to quite explain what it is that so many people claim to have seen. So I found that to be really fascinating.
I agree.
Right?
I'm open.
Yeah,
I'll be open
too.
But please don't haunt me, demons.
Yeah,
Only the good ones.
Yes, only the good ones. So, everyone, as usual, we did a mini deep dive into the subject. We encourage you to do more research. So go get out your fucking Ouija board and conjure the devil already. Unless you're Carolyn, don't do that.
I'm not going to do that.
I'm off to see if I can get a demon to possess me. But with my luck, I'll probably attract some strange-ass poltergeist intent on making my house even messier than it already is. God damn it. All right. Until next time, folks, go pray the goddamn rosary. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye. Spiritu Sancti.